Struggling single dad fixes a tourist's car for free, unaware she's a billionaire CEO in disguise. The road stretched endlessly ahead, bathed in the golden glow of the Texas sunset. Dust swirled in the crisp autumn air as a sleek black sedan came to an unceremonious stop on the side of the highway, its engine sputtering one last breath before dying completely. Inside the car, Emma Sinclair, a woman who had built an empire with nothing but ambition and relentless drive, let out a frustrated, this wasn't supposed to happen. Not to her. Not now." She reached for her phone. No signal, of course. Stepping out onto the quiet open road, Emma scanned the horizon. The only sign of civilization was a small garage in the distance, its neon sign flickering as dusk settled in. With no other option, she started walking. Little did she know, this breakdown wasn't just about her car, it was about her life. And at the end of that road, waiting in the shadows of an old garage, was a man who would change everything she thought. She knew about love, home, and what truly mattered. If you've ever wondered whether one small act of kindness could alter the course of a life, then this story is for you. This isn't just a love story, it's a tale of second chances, unexpected connections, and the quiet magic of finding home in the last place you'd expect. So if you love stories that warm your heart, make you believe in love again, and remind you that the best things in life often come when we least expect them, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, so you never miss another story filled with hope, romance, and inspiration. Now, let's begin. The Texas sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the quiet, winding roads of Willow Creek. The town, nestled between rolling fields and oak-lined highways, was a place where time seemed to move slower, where people waved at strangers and neighbors looked out for each other. Jack Harrison wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, leaning against the hood of a truck parked in front of his small auto repair shop. The garage, a modest but well-kept structure, had been his livelihood for the past 6 years, ever since his wife passed away and he left behind a promising engineering career to raise his daughter. Life had never been easy, but he had found a certain peace in routine, in hard work, and in the quiet love of his 10-year-old daughter Lily. A low hum in the distance caught his attention. A sleek black sedan approached, its engine sputtering before it let out a tired cough and rolled to an unceremonious stop just a few yards from his garage. Jack watched as a woman climbed out, her frustration evident. She was tall, striking, with chestnut brown hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Despite her elegant demeanor, there was something restless about her, like she didn't quite belong here, or anywhere for that matter. She fished her phone from her pocket, only to groan and shake her head. "Of course, no service," she muttered under her breath before glancing around. Spotting Jack, she took a breath and walked toward him, her designer sneakers crunching against the gravel. "Excuse me," she called, attempting a polite but firm tone. "My car broke down and I don't seem to have any signal. Do you have a tow truck?" Jack arched a brow, taking in the scene. Expensive car, impatient demeanor, the slight edge of exasperation in her voice, city girl through and through. "Lucky for you, you broke down in the right place," he said, grabbing a clean rag and stepping forward. "Pop the hood. Let's see what we're working with." She hesitated for a second before nodding, pressing the button to release the hood. Jack peered inside, already diagnosing the issue. Fuel pump failure. Common enough, but not something she could fix on her own. "Your fuel pump's shot," he said after a moment. "I can fix it, but I don't have the part in stock. I'll need to order it. Best case, I can have you back on the road by tomorrow afternoon." The woman sighed, clearly unhappy with the answer. "You're sure there's no quicker fix?" Jack straightened, giving her an amused look. "Unless you've got a magic wand, I'm afraid not." She let out a tired laugh, and for the first time, her expression softened. Should have known better than to drive across Texas alone. Yeah, we don't take kindly to fancy city cars that can't handle a little road dust. His teasing was light-hearted, but she caught the smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. She folded her arms, intrigued. "And how do you know I'm from the city?" Jack motioned to her spotless white sneakers. "No one in Willow Creek wears shoes that clean." She laughed, shaking her head. "You're not wrong." She extended a hand. "Emma Sinclair. Jack Harrison." He shook her hand, his grip firm but warm. "Welcome to Willow Creek. Population, not enough to be on most maps." With no choice but to wait for her car to be repaired, Emma found herself stranded in a town she had never heard of before. She was a woman who lived by a schedule, dictated by meetings, deadlines, and business decisions. But here, time stretched out before her, unhurried and unfamiliar. With her options limited, she wandered into Frank's Diner, a cozy establishment with red leather booths and the scent of fresh coffee hanging in the air. Frank, a burly man with kind eyes and a well-worn apron, greeted her as soon as she stepped inside. "Well now, you must be the tourist who broke down. News travels fast around here." Emma blinked. "How did you—" He chuckled, setting down a fresh cup of coffee. "Jack called ahead, said you might be looking for a place to eat." A strange warmth settled in Emma's chest. She wasn't used to strangers looking out for her, at least not without some ulterior motive. Taking a seat by the window, she glanced outside. Across the street, Jack stood in front of his garage, talking to a young girl, Lily. Emma watched as the little girl animatedly told a story, her hands moving expressively. Jack, despite looking exhausted, listened attentively, nodding and chuckling. At the right moments, Emma wasn't sure why, but the sight stirred something deep inside her. Later that afternoon, Emma returned to the garage to check on her car. Jack was under the hood, sleeves rolled up, smudges of grease on his arms. Lily sat nearby, swinging her legs as she read from a book. "You're back already?" Jack asked, arching a brow as he wiped his hands on a rag. "I didn't have much else to do." Emma leaned against the doorway. "So, is this the part where you overcharge me for parts I don't need?" Jack let out a low chuckle. "That's not how we do things here, Sinclair." Emma tilted her head. "Then why are you fixing my car for free?" Jack's gaze held hers for a long moment before he simply said, "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing, and they didn't ask for anything in return." His words hung in the air, heavier than she expected. For the first time in a long time, Emma found herself at a loss for words. As the sun set over Willow Creek, Emma realized something unexpected. This town, this quiet simplicity, felt good. And Jack Harrison? He was unlike anyone she had ever met. What she didn't know was that this short stop in Willow Creek was about to change her life forever. The morning in Willow Creek was crisp, the kind of autumn air that carried the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the faint sweetness of fallen leaves. The town stirred to life in its own slow rhythm. No rush, no honking traffic, no pressing deadlines. It was a stark contrast to the life Emma Sinclair was accustomed to, where her days began with back-to-back meetings and urgent emails demanding her attention before she even had her first sip of coffee. But today was different. Today, she was in a place that didn't know or care about her title, her wealth, or the power she wielded in boardrooms, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't hate it. Emma had barely taken a sip of her morning coffee at Frank's Diner when the door swung open, and in walked Lily Harrison, her brown hair bouncing in a loose ponytail, a backpack slung over her shoulder. "Emma!" The little girl's voice was bright with excitement as she skipped toward her. "You're still here?" Emma blinked, surprised by the warm greeting. "Well, my car is still broken, so I guess I'm stuck here a little longer," Lily grinned. "That means you can come to the Fall Festival tonight?" Emma hesitated. "The Fall Festival?" Frank, standing behind the counter, chuckled. Biggest event of the season. Bonfire, live music, homemade pies, whole town shows up. Lily clasped her hands together. Please, it's really fun, and Daddy never goes. Maybe you can convince him. Emma smirked. Oh, why doesn't he go? Frank leaned in, lowering his voice playfully. Jack Harrison's not much for socializing. Ever since his wife passed, he's kept to himself. Hard worker, great father, but doesn't take time for himself. Emma glanced out the window, spotting Jack across the street at his garage. Even from here, she could see the tension in his posture, the weight he carried like an old, familiar burden. Without thinking, she found herself saying, "I'll see what I can do." Later that afternoon, Emma strolled across the road to Harrison's Auto Repair, where Jack was hunched under the hood of her car, focused, precise, completely unaware of her approach. She leaned against the garage door, arms crossed. "So, you're avoiding the fall festival?" Jack glanced up, brow furrowing. "Did Lily put you up to this?" "Maybe," Emma smirked. "But it's a small town and I have nothing better to do. So let's make a deal. If you go, I'll go." Jack wiped his hands on a rag, shaking his head with amusement. "That's not much of a bargain for me." "Oh, come on." Emma stepped closer, tilting her head. "You work too much. One night won't kill you." Jack studied her for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then with a sigh, he relented. "Fine, but don't expect me to dance." Emma grinned. "Deal." The fall festival was everything Emma didn't know she needed. String lights glowing between the oak trees, the sound of a live band playing, old country tunes, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted marshmallows filling the air. Jack arrived with Lily in tow, the little girl immediately running off to join her friends. Emma, dressed in a casual sweater and jeans for once, stood beside Jack, hands in her pockets. "Okay, I'll admit it," Jack said, glancing around. "It's not the worst way to spend an evening." Emma smirked. "Told you." As they wandered through the festival, people greeted Jack with familiarity and warmth, a reminder that he wasn't just a mechanic, but a man the town respected and cared for. They stopped by a booth where an elderly woman was selling homemade caramel apples. "Oh, Jack Harrison, you finally crawled out of that garage of yours," she teased. Jack chuckled. "Figured I'd give the town something to talk about." Emma smiled as she watched him interact with the townspeople. He belonged here. There was an ease in the way he spoke, a quiet strength in the way people gravitated toward him. For the first time, she wondered, what would it feel like to belong somewhere like this? As the night wound down, Emma and Jack found themselves near the bonfire, the warmth of the flames flickering against the cool air. "So, city girl," Jack said, glancing at her, "what exactly were you running from when you ended up in this town?" Emma hesitated. No one had asked her that, at least not with genuine curiosity. "My life," she admitted, "or maybe just the version of it I thought I wanted." Jack nodded, as if he understood that feeling all too well. "And what about you?" she asked. "Why did you leave your old life behind?" His jaw tightened slightly, but after a moment he exhaled. "Because when I lost my wife, I realized I couldn't fix what was broken. But I could build something new for Lily." Emma's chest tightened. There it was, the quiet pain beneath his strength. "You're a good father." The words left her lips before she could stop them. Jack glanced at her, something softening in his gaze. "And you're not as lost as you think you are." For the first time in a long time, Emma believed it. As the band played its final slow song, Lily appeared out of nowhere, grabbing Jack's hand. "Daddy, dance with Emma." Jack looked caught off guard. "I don't—" "Come on," Emma teased, holding out her hand. "You did promise." With the reluctant sigh, Jack took her hand, leading her onto the makeshift dance floor. As they swayed under the string lights, something shifted between them, something unspoken, something neither of them were ready to name. Emma wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment, wrapped in Jack Harrison's steady arms, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't ready to leave Willow Creek just yet. The first golden rays of dawn stretched over Willow Creek, casting a soft glow over the town as it slowly came to life. The cool morning air carried the faint scent of fresh-baked bread from Frank's diner, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp leaves. Emma Sinclair, still wrapped in the warmth of last night's memories, stood by the window of her rented cabin, staring out at the quiet streets. She hadn't planned to stay this long. She had a life waiting for her in New York, a corporate empire, board meetings, investors demanding answers, and yet the thought of leaving felt wrong. She had danced with Jack Harrison last night, and it hadn't been just a dance. It had been something else, something unspoken, something she wasn't ready to name. With a deep breath, she shook her head, pushing the thought away. This wasn't her life. This wasn't her world. She needed to leave. Later that morning, Emma made her way to Harrison's auto repair, where Jack was already at work. The garage smelled of oil, steel, and coffee, a scent that felt oddly comforting now. Jack stood under the lifted hood of a truck, his sleeves rolled up, arms covered in grease. His focus was unwavering, every movement precise, every turn of the wrench filled with quiet confidence. Lily, sitting on the workbench, swung her legs as she read aloud from a book, pausing occasionally to ask Jack a question. He answered without hesitation, without ever breaking stride in his work. Emma leaned against the doorway, watching them. It was a picture of something real, something steady, something she had never had growing up. Jack finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "You're up early," Emma smirked. "I was hoping for an update on my car." Jack wiped his hands on a rag. "Parts coming in this afternoon. Should have you back on the road by tonight." Emma swallowed. Tonight, she had been waiting for those words. So why did she feel disappointed? Because leaving meant saying goodbye, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. As the morning stretched into midday, Emma found herself drawn into the life of the town, whether she intended to or not. At Frank's diner, she found herself behind the counter, helping the old man serve coffee when the rush hit. At the farmer's market, she helped an elderly woman load pumpkins into her truck, laughing as the stubborn vegetables refused to stay in place. At the town square, she was introduced to half a dozen locals, each one treating her as if she had lived there forever. And through it all, Jack was never far from her thoughts. As much as she tried to fight it, she felt herself sinking deeper into the rhythm of Willow Creek, into a life that wasn't hers, but felt like it could be, and that scared her more than anything. By late afternoon, the part for Emma's car had arrived. Jack worked in focused silence, fixing the fuel pump with practiced ease. Emma stood nearby, watching him work, feeling a weight settle in her chest. "So, this is it, huh?" she said softly. Jack tightened the last bolt before straightening, meeting her gaze. "Looks like it." Lily, who had been listening from the side, suddenly jumped down from the workbench, running toward Emma with open arms. "You can't leave yet," the little girl protested, squeezing Emma tightly. "We haven't even gone to the lake or seen the fireflies." Emma's heart clenched. She hugged Lily back, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I know, sweetheart, but I have to go." Lily pulled back, her big brown eyes searching Emma's face. "Will you ever come back?" Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because the truth was, she didn't know. As Emma climbed into the driver's seat, she hesitated before turning the key. Jack leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Say something," she willed him. "Give me a reason to stay," but he didn't, and so with a heavy heart, she started the engine. Just as she was about to pull away, Jack finally spoke. "Emma." She froze, looking up, his jaw tightened. "You ever think that maybe you don't have to go back?" Her breath caught. Jack wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, he meant every single one. She swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel. "I have a life there, Jack." His gaze didn't waver. "Maybe, But do you have a home? The words hit her like a punch to the chest, because deep down, she knew the answer. Emma drove away from Willow Creek that evening. But as she watched the town shrink in her rearview mirror, she realized something that terrified her more than anything else. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she was heading in the right direction. The highway stretched endlessly before her, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields that blurred into golden hues under the setting sun. The engine purred smoothly, the car now in perfect condition thanks to Jack Harrison. But for the first time in her life, Emma Sinclair felt lost. She had spent years mastering the art of decisiveness. In boardrooms, her word was law. She never hesitated, never second-guessed herself. Yet now, every mile she put between herself and Willow Creek felt like a mistake. Jack's last words echoed in her mind. Maybe, but do you have a home? She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was ridiculous. She had an empire waiting for her in New York, a life meticulously built with ambition, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of success. And yet, for all of that, she had never felt as grounded, as seen, as at peace as she had in that small town, with a mechanic who barely spoke, but somehow understood her better than anyone ever had. With a sigh, she pulled over at a quiet rest stop, shutting off the engine. The air was crisp, the stars just beginning to blink into existence. Emma leaned against the car, closing her eyes as she let the silence settle around her. She wasn't ready to go back, but she wasn't sure if she had the courage to turn around. By the time Emma reached New York the next afternoon, the city greeted her with its usual chaos, honking taxis, flashing billboards, and sidewalks overflowing with people moving at a relentless pace. The moment she stepped into her penthouse, it felt foreign. The sleek furniture, the spotless marble countertops, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, everything was exactly as she had left it. And yet, it felt hollow. She dropped her suitcase by the door, her body aching with exhaustion. Within minutes, her phone began to ring. Margaret Sinclair. Emma sighed before answering. "Where have you been?" Her mother's voice was sharp, controlled. "I've had to field questions from investors all week. You can't just disappear." Emma rubbed her temple. "I needed a break, Mother. A scoff." "A break?" "Emma, people like us don't get breaks. You have responsibilities." Responsibilities. That word used to define her. Now it felt like a chain. Emma exhaled slowly. "Did you need something?" "I scheduled a dinner with the Harrison Group tonight. They're expecting you." Of course they were. Emma wanted to protest. She wanted to say no, to tell her mother that she was exhausted, that she needed time, but instead she fell into the familiar pattern. "I'll be there." The restaurant was exclusive, sophisticated, soulless. The evening passed in a blur of corporate small talk, polished smiles, and the constant undercurrent of expectations that had dictated Emma's life for as long as she could remember. She barely touched her meal, her mind wandering back to Willow Creek, to warm cups of coffee at Frank's diner, to the sound of Lily's laughter, to the quiet steadiness of Jack Harrison. She had thought distance would make things clearer. Instead, it only made her realize just how much she had left behind. A voice pulled her back. "Emma!" She blinked, realizing Jeremy Harrison, heir to a powerful investment firm, was watching her expectantly. "I was just saying, you and I should do this more often." He smiled, his tone smooth, confident. "It's been a while since we caught up." Emma's stomach twisted. Once this was the world she thought she belonged to, powerful men in tailored suits, deals made over expensive wine, relationships built on convenience and strategy. But now? Now she wanted grease-stained hands and quiet conversations under the stars. She wanted laughter that wasn't rehearsed, moments that weren't calculated. She wanted real, and nothing in this room felt real anymore. Later that night, Emma stood, on her penthouse balcony, staring out at the endless city lights. This was supposed to be enough. She had worked her entire life to get here. So why did she feel so empty? A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find her assistant, Claire, holding a stack of mail. "These came for you." Emma took them absent-mindedly, flipping through bills, invitations, corporate notices, until her fingers froze on a small handwritten envelope. The return address was from Willow Creek. Her breath caught. Slowly, she tore it open, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was from Lily. "Dear Emma, Daddy says you're busy, and I know you have a big, important job, but I wanted to tell you something. I miss you. I miss the way you tell stories and how you help me with my math homework. I miss how you made Daddy laugh, and he doesn't laugh a lot, you know. I told him he should have asked you to stay, but he's stubborn, so maybe I'm asking for both of us. Come back soon, okay? Love." Lily. Emma pressed a hand to her mouth, her chest tightening. She could feel the weight of every word, the quiet plea of a little girl who had unknowingly put into words what Emma had been too afraid to admit to herself. She didn't belong here anymore. She belonged in Willow Creek, with Jack, with Lily, with the life she had been too scared to claim. By dawn, Emma was on the road, her suitcase barely unpacked, her heart pounding, her mind set. This time she wasn't running away. She was going home. The highway stretched before her, familiar yet different this time. Instead of running away, Emma Sinclair was running toward something, toward Willow Creek, toward Jack Harrison, toward a life she had never planned for. But somehow, deep in her, soul knew was meant to be hers. The past few days in New York had felt like an illusion, shiny, structured, but ultimately hollow. She had gone through the motions, sat in meetings, smiled at all the right people, but her heart had been thousands of miles away. It wasn't just the town she missed. It was the people. Lily's laughter, the smell of fresh coffee at Frank's diner, the way Jack looked at her, not like she was some powerful CEO, but just her, and now she was going back. But the question that gnawed at her was whether Jack still wanted her to. By the time Emma's car rolled into Willow Creek, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the town. It looked exactly as she had left it, yet everything felt different, because this time she wasn't a passing visitor. This time she was choosing to be here. She parked outside Harrison's Auto Repair, her heartbeat unsteady as she stepped out of the car. The garage doors were open, and she spotted Jack inside, working on a truck. He was alone, his back to her, his broad shoulders tense with focus. For a moment, she hesitated. What if he didn't want her back? What if she had imagined everything between them, but then she remembered Lily's letter? "Come back soon, okay?" Steeling herself, she took a deep breath and walked forward. "Hey, stranger." Jack froze mid-motion, the wrench in his hand still gripping a bolt. Slowly, he turned around, his stormy blue eyes locking onto hers. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Emma braced herself, preparing for indifference. But then his gaze softened just slightly, and she knew he hadn't expected to see her again. But he wasn't angry, just cautious. "You came back?" Emma swallowed, nodding. "Yeah, I did." Jack set his wrench down, wiping his hands on a rag. He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. New York didn't work out. His tone was carefully neutral, as if he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Emma exhaled, stepping closer. "New York is what I built for myself, but it doesn't feel like home anymore." Something flickered in his eyes, but he didn't speak, so she took another step. "I read Lily's letter." That got a reaction. Jack's jaw clenched slightly, and he let out a breath. "I didn't know she sent it." "I know, but I'm glad she did." Emma smiled softly, "because it made me realize something." She hesitated, her heart pounding. "I Didn't leave because I wanted to. Her voice was quiet, honest. I left because I was scared. Jack's brows furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. Emma continued. I was scared of what this meant, of what I felt, of how easy it was to be here when it shouldn't have been. She took a shaky breath. But I don't want to be scared anymore. A beat of silence passed. Then Jack exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Emma. His voice was rough, conflicted. She knew that tone. He wanted to believe her. But he wasn't sure if he could, and she couldn't blame him. So instead of pushing, she simply said, Tell me I'm too late and I'll leave, I swear. Another silence. Jack looked at her, searching for something in her eyes. Then finally he sighed, shaking his head. You're not too late. Jack looked exhausted, like he had spent the past few days battling something inside himself, and maybe he had. Lily's been waiting for you, he admitted. She kept asking if you'd come back. I told her not to get her hopes up. Emma's chest tightened. I'm sorry, Jack exhaled, rubbing his neck. I don't know how to do this, Emma. She stepped closer, closing the space between them. Neither do I, he huffed out a quiet laugh. Well, that's reassuring, Emma smiled. I don't have all the answers, Jack, but I know this. I don't want to be anywhere but here. He studied her again, and this time the walls he had been holding up slowly crumbled. Then finally he reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. It was hesitant. It was uncertain, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she belonged. That night, Lily tackled Emma in a hug the moment she walked through the door. I knew you'd come back, she squealed. Emma laughed, hugging her tightly. I missed you, kiddo. Jack stood in the doorway, watching the exchange, something unreadable in his eyes. Then, after a long moment, he simply said, Stay for dinner. Emma looked at him, her heart skipping. A beat. It wasn't an invitation, it was a beginning. The scent of homemade chili and cornbread filled the small kitchen of Jack Harrison's house, blending with the low hum of a country song playing on the old radio by the window. The home was modest but warm, filled with well-loved furniture, framed photos of Lily at different ages, and a lingering sense of comfort that Emma hadn't realized she missed until now. She sat at the kitchen table, watching as Jack moved effortlessly around the stove, stirring the pot with one hand while balancing a wooden spoon in the other. Lily, sitting across from Emma, kicked her legs happily. Daddy's chili is the best. You're gonna love it. Emma smirked. I don't doubt it. Jack shot her a look over his shoulder, a flicker of amusement in his usually serious expression. Don't let her hype it up too much. It's just chili. Lily gasped dramatically. Just chili? Daddy, that's offensive to all the chili in the world. Emma chuckled, leaning back in her chair. The exchange felt natural, like she belonged here in this kitchen with these two people who had somehow become important to her without her even realizing it. But reality had a way of creeping back in. She had nowhere to stay, and she had no plan. After dinner, as Lily helped clear the table, Jack leaned against the counter, his arms crossed over his chest. So where are you staying? His voice was calm, but there was something careful about the way he asked. Emma hesitated. I haven't figured that out yet. He exhaled through his nose, setting his plate in the sink. I figured. Before she could say anything else, Lily came bouncing back into the room. Emma can stay in the guest room, the little girl declared, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. Emma blinked. Oh, I don't... Lily. Jack's voice was quiet but firm. That's not our decision to make. Lily frowned. But she doesn't have anywhere else. She turned to Emma, her big brown eyes pleading. You said you weren't ready to leave yet, right? Emma's heart clenched. She had meant those words, but she hadn't expected to be invited into their lives so quickly. Jack was watching her now, carefully, waiting for her reaction. Say yes. The thought startled her, but it was true. She didn't want to leave. She didn't. Want to stay at some motel, alone with her thoughts, pretending she wasn't longing for the warmth of this place, this family. She swallowed hard before speaking. I don't want to be a burden. Jack's gaze flickered, something unreadable in his expression. You wouldn't be. And just like that, the decision was made. She was staying. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Jack showed Emma to the small but cozy guest room. The bed was simple but comfortable, with soft blankets and an old rocking chair in the corner that looked well used. The window overlooked the backyard, where the faint glow of fireflies flickered in the distance. Emma hesitated in the doorway, turning to Jack. Are you sure about this? Jack leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have offered. She nodded, biting her lip. I don't know how long. I'll be here. He studied her for a moment before speaking. Then we'll figure it out one day at a time. There was something about the way he said it, steady, reassuring, like he wasn't afraid of the unknown. Unlike her. Emma exhaled, offering him a small smile. Thank you, Jack. He gave her a single nod before stepping back. Get some rest, Sinclair. She closed the door behind him, pressing her back against it. Her heart was pounding, one day at a time. She could do that. Maybe, for the first time. In her life, she didn't have to have everything planned out. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. A stark contrast to the honking taxis and construction noise she was used to in New York. For a moment, she simply lay there absorbing the quiet. Then a soft knock at the door. Emma? Lily's voice. Emma sat up. Come in. The door creaked open, and Lily peeked in, holding a book to her chest. Daddy left early for work. He said you could come by later. Emma smiled. And you? Shouldn't you be getting ready for school? Lily hesitated before stepping inside. I thought maybe we could read first. Emma blinked. She wanted to read with her. Something warm spread through her chest. She was becoming part of Lily's world, and maybe, just maybe, she was becoming part of Jack's too. Later that morning, Emma found herself back at Harrison's auto repair, watching as Jack worked beneath a lifted truck. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You're up early. Jack wiped his hands on a rag before glancing at her. Habit, Emma exhaled, gathering her courage. Can I ask you something? He set down his rag, giving her his full attention. Shoot, she hesitated. Why? Did you let me stay? Jack studied her for a moment before speaking. Because Lily wanted you here. Emma's heart sank, but before she could respond, he added, and because I didn't want you to leave either. Silence stretched between them. This time, there was no running away. Emma nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at her lips. One day at a time, Jack huffed out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. Yeah, one day at a time. But deep down, they both knew this wasn't just temporary anymore. The late afternoon sun stretched golden light over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the quiet town. The days were growing shorter, the air cooler, autumn settling in with a gentle but firm presence, much like the changes taking root in Emma Sinclair's life. She hadn't meant to stay this long, but every morning when she woke to Lily's laughter, to the smell of coffee brewing in Jack's kitchen, to the easy rhythm of this town, leaving felt like an impossible thought. And Jack, he was still cautious, still the same steady, reserved man she had met weeks ago. But something had shifted, something neither of them dared to name just yet. That evening, Emma sat on the porch, swing of Jack's house, wrapped in one of his flannel blankets. Lily was asleep inside, the faint sound of her breathing filtering through the open window. Jack stepped onto the porch, 2 mugs in hand. Figured you might want one. Emma took the coffee with a small smile. Thanks. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the darkened horizon. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something unspoken, something fragile but growing stronger. Emma traced the rim of her mug before speaking. "You don't talk much about her." Jack didn't have to ask who she meant. He let out a slow breath. "Lily's mom." Emma nodded. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then his voice was quiet, steady. Her name was Rachel. Emma stayed silent, letting him decide how much to share. "We met in high school, got married young. She was the best person I ever knew." A pause. Then, "Cancer took her." Emma's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry, Jack." He nodded, staring at the stars. "After she passed, I had two choices, break apart or build something for Lily, so I stayed. I worked. I did what I could to keep things steady." He exhaled. "But I stopped letting people in." Emma swallowed hard, her heart aching for the man standing before her. Jack turned, meeting her gaze. "And then you showed up." She stilled, and suddenly Lily's laughing more. "The house feels less empty. And I—" He trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know what to do with that." Emma set her coffee down, standing. "Maybe you don't have to do anything." A flicker of something in his eyes, hope maybe, fear definitely. She stepped closer. "You don't have to have all the answers, Jack." His jaw clenched. "And what about you?" Emma swallowed. "I don't know either." A beat of silence. Then finally Jack nodded. "One day at a time." Emma exhaled, a slow smile forming. "One day at a time." The next morning Emma found herself at Harrison's Auto Repair, holding a wrench with uncertainty. Frank leaned against the workbench, watching with amusement. "You sure you want to do this, Sinclair?" Emma rolled her eyes. "I can handle a wrench." "We'll see about that." Jack, standing by the open hood of a pickup truck, smirked. "All right, city girl, let's see what you got." Emma narrowed her eyes at him before turning to the engine. She had spent years running a billion-dollar company, making million-dollar decisions. But this was different, and she loved it. By the time she had grease smudged across her cheek and a sore wrist from trying to loosen a stubborn bolt, she was laughing, real, unrestrained laughter. Jack leaned against the truck, watching her with something close to admiration, and for the first time, Emma didn't feel like a woman out of place. She felt like she belonged, the storm that changes everything that evening. Dark clouds rolled in over Willow Creek. The first rumble of thunder echoed across the sky as heavy rain poured down in relentless sheets. Emma was in the living room, curled up with Lily on the couch, reading a book, when suddenly, crack! Power went out. Lily let out a startled gasp. "Daddy?" Jack was already grabbing a flashlight. "It's okay, sweetheart, just the storm." Emma stood, instinctively reaching for Lily's hand. "Is there anything we need to do?" Jack shook his head. "Shouldn't last long, but I should check the generator in the garage." Emma nodded. "I'll come with you." Outside, the rain was cold and relentless, drumming against the metal roof of the garage. Emma shivered as Jack fiddled with the generator, muttering under his breath. "You sure you know what you're doing?" she teased. Jack shot her a look. "This coming from the woman who took 20 minutes to unscrew a bolt this morning," Emma gasped. "It was stark." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. Then, just as the laughter faded, he turned to her fully. The storm raged around them, but suddenly it didn't matter, because he was looking at her, really looking at her, and Emma knew in that moment something had changed. Jack reached out, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face, his touch gentle, but deliberate, her breath hitched. "Emma." His voice was low, rough. She swallowed. "Yeah?" A long pause. Then, in the softest whisper, "Tell me you're staying." Emma's chest ached because she knew this was it. The choice. The moment. And this time she didn't hesitate. "I'm staying." Jack exhaled, relief washing over his face. Then, before she could say another word, he kissed her. The rain poured, the thunder rolled, and Emma? She was finally home. The morning after the storm, Willow Creek was wrapped in a fresh, rain-washed glow. The air was crisp, the streets damp, but the sky had cleared into a perfect shade of blue. Everything felt different, especially for Emma Sinclair. Because she had kissed Jack Harrison, or rather, he had kissed her, and she had kissed him back, without hesitation, without doubt. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a promise, a shift in the unspoken tension between them. Now, as she stood in the kitchen making coffee, she could still feel the warmth of his hands on her skin, the way he had looked at her like she was something he didn't want to let go of. And that terrified her, because Jack was not a man who took risks with his heart, and Emma was a woman who had never let herself fall like this before. Jack entered the kitchen a few minutes later, freshly showered, hair damp, moving with the same quiet, steady energy that had always defined him. But this time, when his eyes met hers, something was different. There was no hesitation, no walls between them, just acceptance. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Morning," Emma smirked. "Morning." A pause. Then, with the faintest hint of amusement, "So, about last night?" Emma's breath caught. She set down her coffee, meeting his gaze. "Are you regretting it?" Jack's brows furrowed. "No." His voice was firm, unwavering. "Not for a second." Relief flooded her chest. "But—" Jack hesitated. "I need to know what this means for you, Emma, because Lily, she already loves you, and I can't—" He exhaled sharply. "I can't let her get hurt." Emma swallowed, her throat tightening. She understood. Jack wasn't just protecting himself. He was protecting his daughter, his home, the life he had built from the ashes of his past, and she needed to prove to him that this wasn't temporary. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Jack." He studied her, searching for any sign of uncertainty, and when he didn't find one, he exhaled, his fingers tightening around hers. "Okay." Just one word. But it was enough. By midday, Willow Creek had found out. It started with Frank at the diner, who noticed the way Jack looked at Emma over breakfast. Then it spread to Mrs. Henderson at the farmer's market, who caught Emma smiling to herself as she picked out fresh apples. By the afternoon, everyone knew, and they all had something to say about it. Took him long enough. "I told you that city girl was different." Jack Harrison actually smiling. "Someone write this down." Emma pretended to be annoyed, but deep down she liked it. For the first time in her life, she was part of something bigger than herself. She wasn't just a visitor passing through. She was Emma Sinclair, the woman Jack Harrison had fallen for, and she never wanted to leave. That evening, as Emma helped Lily with her school project at the kitchen table, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but when she saw the caller ID, her stomach dropped. Margaret Sinclair. She hesitated before stepping outside, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hello, Mother." Her mother's voice was cold, precise. "I assume you've had your fun." Emma stiffened. "What do you want?" "To remind you that you have a company to run. Investors are getting nervous. You can't just disappear." Emma clenched her jaw. "I didn't disappear. I made a choice." A sharp scoff. "A choice? To play house in some nowhere town with a mechanic?" Rage boiled in Emma's chest. "His name is Jack, and what happens when this little fantasy of yours fades?" Her mother's voice was cool, almost pitying. "You belong here, Emma. You're not meant for that kind of life." Emma's hands trembled because a small part of her, the part shaped by years of conditioning, wondered if her mother was right. Could she really stay? Could she walk away from everything she had built for a life she had never planned for? She didn't know, And that terrified her. That night, Emma sat on the porch, staring at the sky. She didn't hear Jack approach until he was right beside her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. He handed her one, then sat down next to her. "You okay?" Emma hesitated. "My mother called." Jack's jaw tensed. "Let me guess. She thinks you should go back." Emma exhaled, wrapping her fingers around the warm mug. "She thinks I don't belong here." Silence stretched between them. Then Jack spoke, soft, steady. "Do you?" Emma turned to look at him. His blue eyes were unreadable, but there was something beneath the surface, something cautious, something afraid. Because if her answer was no, he didn't just lose her. Emma's heart ached. She set her coffee down, then reached for his hand. "I don't know what my future looks like, Jack." His jaw clenched, but he didn't pull away. "But I know one thing for sure." She swallowed. "I don't want a life without you in it." Jack exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Then he lifted her hand, pressing a slow, lingering kiss against her knuckles. "Then we'll figure it out." His voice was quiet but firm. "Together." Emma nodded, and for the first time, she truly believed it. The days in Willow Creek began to fall into an easy rhythm, one that Emma Sinclair never expected to crave. But now, she couldn't imagine living without it. Mornings with Lily at the breakfast table, Jack's quiet glances from across the kitchen, the steady hum of life in a town that had embraced her as one of their own. She had stopped thinking about deadlines and stock prices. Instead, she thought about how to help Frank organize the fall fundraiser, how to keep up with Lily's endless questions about life, how to decode the small but meaningful gestures Jack made every day. She was happy. For the first time in her life, she was truly, deeply happy. But happiness, she knew, had a way of being tested, and the test was coming. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Emma was at Harrison's Auto Repair, perched on the passenger seat of a truck Jack was fixing, flipping through a local newspaper. She had spent the morning teasing him about how much oil ended up on his shirt and learning how to replace a tire properly. It was ordinary, simple, perfect. Then the bell above the garage door jingled. Jack straightened, wiping grease from his hands. "Be right with you." But Emma froze because she recognized the voice that followed. "That won't be necessary." She turned slowly, and there, standing in the doorway of the garage, polished, immaculate, and completely out of place, was Margaret Sinclair, Emma's mother. Jack's eyes flicked to Emma instantly, sensing the tension before a single word had been spoken. Margaret's gaze swept the garage with thinly veiled disdain, then landed on Emma. "You've had your fun, darling. Now, it's time to come home." Emma stepped off the truck, forcing her hands to stay steady. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Margaret let out a sigh as if this was exhausting for her. "I gave you time, Emma, but now the board is growing restless. We need you back." Emma's heart pounded. She knew this moment would come. She just hadn't expected it to be so soon. She could feel Jack watching her, quiet, unreadable. Margaret crossed her arms. "You belong in New York, not here playing house with a mechanic." Emma clenched her jaw. "Do not disrespect him." Margaret arched a brow. "I'm not. I'm simply stating the truth. You're wasting your time here, Emma." Jack's posture stiffened, but he didn't say a word. Emma felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was the final test. Did she belong in the world she built, or the world she was building here? Margaret exhaled, shifting tactics. "Emma, you worked too hard to throw it all away for—" She gestured vaguely around her. "This." Emma shook her head. "You don't get it." Margaret's gaze softened just slightly. "Then explain it to me." Emma inhaled sharply. "For years, I thought success meant power, control, always pushing for the next deal, the next goal. I thought that was happiness, but then I came here and I realized I was wrong." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here." Emma's voice didn't waver. Then why does it feel like home? Silence. Margaret looked at her for the first time, as if she didn't recognize her own daughter. Emma's chest ached, but she didn't back down. "I'm not going back, Mother." The words were final, irreversible. Margaret exhaled. "You'll regret this." Emma lifted her chin. "No, for the first time I won't." Without another word, Margaret turned and walked away, and just like that, Emma was free. As soon as Margaret's car disappeared down the road, Emma let out a shaky breath. Jack finally spoke. "Are you okay?" Emma turned to him, her heart still pounding. "I just walked away from everything I built." A long pause. Then Jack said, "No, you walked towards something better." Emma's chest tightened, because deep down she knew he was right. That evening, as they sat around the kitchen table, Lily looked up from her plate, curious and unfiltered as always. "So, does this mean you're really staying?" Emma met Jack's gaze across the table, a silent conversation passing between them. Then she smiled at Lily. "Yeah, kiddo, I'm really staying." Lily grinned, throwing her arms in the air. "Best day ever," Jack chuckled, shaking his head. And Emma? She felt lighter than she had in years. Later that night, as Emma stood outside on the porch, staring at the endless stars, Jack stepped beside her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, close enough that their arms brushed. Then, "Finally, you sure about this?" His voice was low, steady. Emma turned to him. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Jack's eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. And for the first time in a long time, Emma Sinclair wasn't afraid of what came next. Because this time, she wasn't walking away from something. She was walking toward it, toward him, toward home. The soft hum of morning in Willow Creek was something Emma Sinclair had come to love. The way the sunlight spilled over the rolling fields, the distant sound of a rooster crowing from a nearby farm, the quiet laughter of Lily Harrison, already outside, twirling in the golden glow of dawn. For the first time in a very long time, Emma felt something she never thought she'd have: peace. Not the kind that came from winning deals, climbing ranks, or proving herself in a boardroom, but the kind that came from knowing, without a doubt, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Jack Harrison stood in the kitchen, his back to her as he poured 2 mugs of coffee. Emma leaned against the doorway, watching him. She had spent years surrounded by men in suits, men who wore ambition like armor. But this man wore work-worn hands, quiet strength, and a heart big enough to carry the world on his shoulders, and she loved him for it. He turned, raising an eyebrow. "You gonna stare at me all morning, Sinclair?" Emma smirked, stepping forward, and taking the coffee from his hand. "Maybe," he chuckled, shaking his head. "You're impossible." She took a slow sip of the coffee, savoring the warmth. "And yet, here we are." Jack exhaled, watching her. Then, with a small smile, he murmured, "Yeah, here we are." Later that day, Emma found herself at Frank's diner, standing behind the counter as she wiped down the booths. It still felt surreal. 1 year ago, she'd been closing deals in New York, standing in boardrooms with billionaires. Now, she was taking pie orders and making small talk with the town mayor about the upcoming fall festival. And she had never been happier. Frank walked in, tipping his hat. "I still can't believe I let you take over this place." Emma grinned. "You didn't. Let me. I convinced you," Frank chuckled. "That you did, Sinclair. That you did." That evening, Jack drove Emma out to the lake. The sun was setting, the sky painted in streaks of orange and violet. They sat on the hood of his truck, the cool breeze rustling through the trees. While neither of them spoke, then Jack exhaled. "You still happy here?" Emma turned to look at him. She didn't hesitate. More than I've ever been. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Good. Then, before she could ask why he had brought her here, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught. Jack flipped it open, revealing a simple but stunning ring. Elegant, timeless, perfect. Her eyes flicked back up to his, and in that moment she knew this man wasn't just asking her to stay. He was asking her to be his forever. Jack exhaled, his voice steady, sure, filled with the kind of love that didn't demand. It simply was. Marry me, Emma. Her chest tightened, not because she was unsure, but because she had never been so certain of anything in her life. Tears stung her eyes as she let out a soft laugh. "Took you long enough, Harrison," Jack smirked. "Is that a yes?" Emma swallowed hard, then nodded. "It's a yes." And as he slipped the ring onto her finger, she realized something. She had spent her whole life chasing the idea of success. But this was what success really looked like. Love, family, a place to call home, and a man who would stand beside her, no matter what. 1 year later, the diner was busier than ever, filled with the familiar sounds of laughter, conversation, and the clinking of coffee mugs. Emma stood behind the counter, watching as Lily helped take orders, her apron slightly too big for her small frame. Across the diner, Jack sat at his usual booth, sipping coffee as he read the morning paper. And outside, Willow Creek moved at its usual slow, steady rhythm. It was perfect, not because it was grand or extravagant, but because it was theirs, and that was all that ever mattered. And there you have it, a story of love, second chances, and the unexpected twists that life throws our way. But now, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I'm always curious to see how far our stories travel. What part of the story resonated with you the most? Was it the moment Emma realized she had found a home, or the way Jack quietly but fiercely loved her? Let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video if it touched your heart. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story filled with love, kindness, and inspiration. Hit the notification bell to be the first to hear the next heartwarming tale. Thank you for being here. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to share more incredible stories with you. Until next time, stay inspired, stay kind, and keep believing in love.